And we're live. Yeah, that your surname must be like a bit of a tough one for many people, because I was actually now, when I was just looking at my notes, I was thinking, okay, come, let's say this again. Haralambous, do it right.
Perfect. I've been on every kind of media. BBC, I was on BBC many years ago, and the lady goes, "I'd like to introduce you to Nic Haralambous." And I was like, no. But that's the game, right? That's how we go.
So is that Greek?
It's actually Cypriot. It is a Greek surname, but my family is half Greek, half Cypriot. Mother's side is Greek, father's side is Cypriot.
Okay. And when did they come here?
Both of them were born here. My grandparents came from Cyprus and Greece, respectively.
And do you speak?
Badly, but I read and write fluently.
Okay, that's nice. So what is that thing that's withholding you from speaking it? Is it just the fact that there's no opportunity to speak it?
Yep, I don't speak often enough, so I don't speak often enough. It's one of those self-fulfilling cycles. But my plan next year, when this cluster of pandemic is over, is to be in Greece for a few months, and then it'll just fly.
Yeah, man. So I was very lucky when I was young. When I say young, 20, I think 23. I got the opportunity to play rugby in Italy in a place called Rovigo. So, and I mean, I'm from Bloemfontein, and I've never been outside Bloemfontein. No, I'm lying. I've been to Joburg once or twice to play games for the under 21s, and then all of a sudden I got this opportunity to go to Italy, and I took it, right. So honest to God, it was very hard to speak proper English at the time, because and in Bloem you really only speak Afrikaans. You don't get an opportunity to speak English. So I was struggling with English. And the next thing, I was in Italy, and I was there with a guy called Christian Stewart. You might know Christian from Cape Town. And I realized I have to learn, because in Italy, they don't entertain another language. If there's 10 Italians in a circle and there's if there's 5 Italians in a circle and there's one other guy with another language, they will not change for you. It's you on your own. You better understand Italian, or 100%. You're not part of the team, man. So that was quite interesting. So I learned very quickly and here's the funny thing. The first year I had a professor, and they were teaching me the basics in grammar, so you can at least understand. I don't know if the same with you guys, but there's feminine and masculine and plural and singular, and it's complicated because the words change at the end. And so I got to understand at least those things. And but where I learned the most is in the evenings after training, having a beer with the boys at the bar. That's where you learn the most.
That's the stuff that you don't get if you aren't around native speakers frequently, because you always do. You defer to your most comfortable language. And my family, even here in South Africa, it's all English. It's easier to speak English. So we just do. But that's my short Greek story.
Yeah. So I'm going to do what you do to your people on your podcast, and I like that, actually. Introduce yourself in your own words.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. This introduce myself has got me all sorts of interested at the moment. And my latest podcast guest is a really intelligent and incredible lady called Sam Beck-Bessinger. And she helped me with this. She has been working on verbage versus nounage. So verb would be, I write. The noun would be, I am a writer. And I struggle with the nouns, right? I feel the imposter syndrome is always overwhelming. So I struggle to call myself a writer or a whatever. So the way that I try to introduce myself is I am an entrepreneur. I'm an obsessive business builder. I am incredibly curious by nature, and I've been writing since I was a child. So I spend my time researching, reading, and writing about building businesses and helping people build better businesses.
Wonderful. So, and again, I was thinking the other day, where did I actually come across you? Why are we talking?
I was going to ask you the same thing.
Yeah. So I thought about it, and I remembered it's LinkedIn. I mean, you're quite active on LinkedIn, I've seen. And so I think it started over lockdown. Somehow the algorithm started showing me your stuff where you basically just talk to people, on, and I have to commend you. I mean, that's not an easy thing, right? It's easy to do this, what we're doing now, because we're chatting, right? It's just you and me chatting. Yeah. But doing what the few ones I've seen that you've done where you just talk, I mean, obviously, of course, you prepare, right?
No, actually.
Really?
So the videos on my YouTube, what I do is, I'm very focused on content I know very well. So I don't try and talk about things that I'm not comfortable with. That's when I find you have to research and script. So I stick to my knitting. I have been building businesses since I was 16. I've been in the startup world for the last 15 years, raising money. I've been self-working for the last 5 years, trying to make myself better. So that's what I talk about. So what I do is find high-level themes, and then I talk about the theme. And that's it. I riff off the theme. It's the same as if I had to ask you about training for a World Cup rugby match, you wouldn't have to really think about the content too much. You know it. You've done it. You've lived it. So it's easy to talk about.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That's very true with everything in life, right? So it's easy to converse if it's something that you really know. Yeah, man. So I've just seen you talking, and I thought let's have a chat. And I've done a bit of research now. So like I said to you before, I just normally chat, same as you. I just love talking, rubbish. And I did go into your website, and I have to tell you, I mean, it looks like you're getting a book out, how to start a side hustle next year.
That comes out in mid-February, nationwide and globally through Amazon.com. And that's been a trip. So I started writing that book about a week into lockdown. In fact, a week before lockdown. So my best friend races Ferraris in the GT series in the UK and Europe. And he contacted me and he was like, you guys aren't taking this seriously enough. Like, this is coming. You better get your shit together. So around 2 weeks before lockdown kicked in, I stayed at home, quarantined, self-isolated, and just hunkered down. And I thought to myself, it's going to get bad. It's going to get bad, and people are going to lose jobs, and we're going to need to start diversifying our income streams. So what do I bring to the table? Well, 20 years of experience. So I wrote an ebook in 3 weeks and pushed it out on my website and Amazon and self-published. And off the back of that, built an online course, how to start a side hustle. And about 2 months ago, Tafelberg Publishers picked it up and wanted to publish it nationwide. So I spent 4 weeks refining the book, and it gets published in February.
I have to tell you, I mean, the name How to Start a Side Hustle, great, but that next bit, I love it. Listen, a playbook for the post-COVID economy. Man, I like that.
Thank you, but we've actually removed COVID from the final subtitle, and the reason is because apparently Amazon is rejecting books with COVID in the title.
Why is that?
I have no idea, but a few authors I've spoken to who've tried to push out content in that way have had to either minimize the use of that word or get rid of it off the title completely. So by the time it comes out, it'll be more than 12 months. That we just thought, let's rather keep that off the title. It's in the content of the book, but now the subtitle is A Playbook for a New Economy.
Oh, say that again?
A Playbook for a New Economy.
Okay. Well, we know what it is, right? We all know what that means. So yeah, that's cool.
Exactly. But look, that's what it is. And the thing, I'm sure you've heard this, and everyone listening and watching this will have heard this too. We're in a new normal. We're in a new world. And it kind of doesn't sit well with me, because I don't feel like it is a new world. I feel like it's an accelerated world. I feel like everything we have, we were always going to have. We were just going to have it in 5 or 10 years, and now we have it now. So I'm not sure about the new normal. I just think it's an accelerated normal.
What's your view on this whole thing? What's your view on COVID? What's your view on, I mean, dare we go into it, whether it's substantiated or not?
I am not a medical professional, so I will not offer a view on that. What I will offer is a view on lockdowns, a view on economies. I think that South Africa did exceptionally well to combat the initial wave, to get lockdown under wraps. But I think, like most of the world, after that, we were flailing and guessing. And I think everyone has been guessing. And I think we're all guessing. Because, I mean, in our lifetime, it's not unheard of in the world, but in our lifetime, we haven't had the Black Plague. This is the first time. So I think that it's been an adapting time for all of us. And the people that I'm seeing respond the best are those who have agility built into their lives, are those people who are used to uncertainty, are those people who are resilient and have built up grit. The ones who are struggling most are those who go to a 9 to 5 every day, expect someone to pay them every month, and they don't have any concern that things might be disrupted. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16. Every year of my life, I expect things to disrupt themselves. I expect that I'm going to lose a big client. I expect that I might lose my whole business in a month. That's just the way that my life has been structured. So it was intense for me, but not strange. It was a new kind of uncertainty. So I don't know. I try to use my best judgments. And the key thing that I've done, I was in London a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and it's crazy over there. Like, they don't care. 60,000, 70,000 new cases a day. No one's checking quarantine and self-isolation. Very few masks all over. My version is let everybody do their best as long as it's not harming other people. And that's the key thing. So wear a mask and don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't put other people in your harm's way, and do the best you can to get the economy back on its feet.
Yeah, and you, I mean, as you say, you see yourself as a specialist in startups, as someone with a lot of experience. And do you think that out of everything, there's always people that pivot quickly. There's people that quickly understand, listen, it's going to change. What do we do? How can we make money out of this? How can we make a success out of it? Do you think there's going to be a lot of that now with new startups coming, tech businesses, I would imagine, because a lot of the stuff that we do go online now, and there's peripheral businesses of that?
Yeah, I think we're in for a really interesting next decade. Many years ago, I wrote an article that did very well, over 1.5 million views internationally. And the sign-off line was plan in decades, think in years, live in months, work in days. And the plan in decades parts, I think not enough people are doing. Startups generally do plan in decades. We try and solve problems that are big enough to solve a decade's worth of issues. And I think the next decade, 2020 to 2030, we're going to see a step shift in change of how we operate, how the world looks, what's possible, with big things like Tesla changing the face of automobiles, and SpaceX getting us to Mars and the moon. Those big things, all the way down to startups fixing lower back problems for people who sit down all the day. Like, I think that we're starting to look at the world in a different way. I think that we're starting to focus on climate change and humanity rather than capitalism for the sake of capitalism. And I do think that out of this pandemic, people are starting to change the way they see the world and the way they see their world. What I mean by that is I have been big on self-care, mental health, physical health for the last 5 or 6 years, because I am bald, because I don't deal with mental health very well, because I have anxiety and stress-induced ulcers and all sorts of stuff. I think now that's going to be the default. Businesses that are focused on people, not on profits. So I do think that there is a very fundamental shift going to happen. But I think what's important is, and all the coaching and mentoring I do with side hustles and startups, I tell people to not pivot away from the things that they're good at. I have a story that I like to tell. Many years ago, I interviewed the lawyer who defended the Napster founder. I'm not sure if you know about Napster. For those listeners who don't, it was the very first internet peer-to-peer sharing platform, and it was all illegal. Like, you could basically steal stuff from artists and share it around the world for free. And this guy was a copyright and patent attorney. That was his specialty. And he said to me, there's some funny thing that people believe that shower moments, that moment of inspiration in the shower, they believe that they have those. And he's like, that's not true. They don't happen. They don't exist. He said, I'll tell you why. If you have a shower moment about how to make a Tesla go faster, and you have never worked in engineering, you have not solved that problem. All you've done is come up with something someone else has already thought of. Shower moments happen with people who are in the industry, who've been working on a problem for 10 years. And while they're in the space, they're in a shower and distracted, and then the answer hits them. And I think what people are doing now is going, oh, I'm in a pandemic. I've never been in an online business before. I need to start one. Cool. But you know nothing about hosting, about websites, about payment gateways, about online marketing, about digital marketing and branding. It's a whole new world to learn. So stick to your knitting and pivot towards what you're good at while you're trying to come out of this pandemic and figure out something new.
Yeah, yeah, very true. So just back to Napster quickly. If I'm not mistaken, did you watch the movie? The Facebook movie.
Oh yeah, the social network. Yes.
Was it not the Napster guy that in the beginning, eventually he took them to the seed funders. Was it not him?
So
What?
it was, it's an interesting thing. It's kind of him, but the actual Napster founder's name is Sean Fanning. And the person in the movie that Justin Timberlake played was actually one of the co-founders and sort of early investors, not actually the original founder.
Right. I love that
Strange but
movie.
true. Yeah, Sean Parker you're thinking of.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's it. Hey man, I love that movie. I really enjoyed. Obviously, I don't know. Is that the real truth? Everything is that all? I don't know, but I really enjoyed the movie. It was cool.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the person who wrote the script, Aaron Sorkin. I'm rewatching The West Wing at the moment, and you can see Aaron Sorkin's method of writing, that quick, very fast, kind of staccato way that they talk. There's a very specific way that he writes. I've watched a whole bunch of interesting videos on this. He writes in poetry mechanisms like iambic pentameters, so that you can kind of follow along the melody of the way that these guys talk. When you watch the movie again, it's insane to follow how they talk and the tics that they have and how the characters cut each other off to create certain effects and get your brain thinking in a different way. It's staggering.
Yeah. Before we get to the business, which I actually want to talk about, but you just said something about anxiety. Are you happy to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an open book.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your anxiety history, where it comes from. What is the story?
I actually don't have a very clear answer to like where it comes from, but I do believe I've always been an anxious person. And I think that anxiety for me is not panic anxiety. It's more ambitious, stress-driven anxiety. I see a psychologist once every few months, and I have done so for about 4 or 5 years. For anyone who's listening who doesn't see a psychologist and scoffs at it, you're wrong. That's the first thing. The second thing is the way to reframe this for most people, especially South African men who struggle with this, is if professional athletes are allowed to have coaches for fitness and coaches for health, why should entrepreneurs and everyday people not have coaches for their brains, coach for your mind? So I look at my psychologist as a mental coach. And 2 sessions in, this is about 4 years ago, he said to me, Nic, do you realize that you are addicted to anxiety? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I don't know what that means. And he said, do you know what happens to your body physically, physiologically, when you get anxious? And of course I didn't. So he explained to me that when you get anxious, your body's response in a physiological way is that it pumps dopamine into your brain and floods your body with serotonin. These are the things that make you feel good and clarify your thinking. So he said, when you get anxious, you work better. You're in a better position to do work. And this is why, if you aren't having something to be anxious about, you invent something to be anxious about. So if there are no problems in my life, I make problems. I make things, I'm so busy. It's crazy how insane everything is. And he said, you have to figure out how to do the same level of work without the anxiety. And this is what I've spent the last 4 years trying to figure out is how do you operate at the best level without killing yourself? I mean, just to put this into context, my body's response to stress and anxiousness is physical. Literally, I had hair in a ponytail 10 years ago. I've had stomach ulcers that have hospitalized me. I've had kidney stones twice. I've had insomnia. I've had everything you can imagine just because of stress. And I knew that I had to get this under wraps because it was holding me back. It was preventing me from being the best version of myself. It was also making me an asshole. Like I was just a mean person to be around. So I've done a lot of self-work to get this under wraps. Very simple things like exercising more often, that helps. I like to say that there are 3 very simple things to help you with anxiety. One is eat properly. What does that mean? Eat less refined stuff. That's it. Like it's not more complicated than that. Eat food in its natural form. I eat chocolate. I love chocolate, but it's not my main thing. I don't eat McDonald's every week. Then sleep properly. People underestimate sleep. the best pill you can take to help you with your stress is 8 hours of sleep every single night. Hands down, the best thing you can do. Those 20-year-olds who tell me that they work till 3 a.m, I just say to them, cool, what happens when there's someone who works till 4 a.m? And they work harder than you and faster than you. You need sleep. You're not good at 3 a.m. And then the last one is exercise. Those three things, unequivocally, if I do them every day, I am a happier, healthier human to be around. Yeah. So that's kind of what I started to do is I changed my morning routines. I changed the way I work. I changed the work I do. For example, today, I think I got 2 emails and that's it. I don't get email. Like I've structured my day so that email is not important to my work. Then I wake up early, between 5:30 and 6 a.m. every morning. The first thing I do is meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. Then I do yoga and stretching and then 30 minutes of exercise because I have lower back issues like everyone in the earth. Then I walk my dogs for about 20 or 30 minutes. Then I come back and have coffee, shower, and start writing. That's my morning, every morning. And that helps me not panic and not stress. I'm also reading a lot of stuff that helps me kind of process things. I've just started reading the Stoic philosophy, so Stoicism, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, and that kind of helps you find a middle. Their whole mantra is, yes, emotions exist, and yes, life is difficult, but you don't let them affect you in the massive ups and downs. And entrepreneurs, every day is an up and down, and you have to learn to find the middle. My anxiety is something I battle with constantly, but I do believe it pushes me to be a better version of myself when I have it under wraps.
Thank you for sharing. So someone just wrote here, a LinkedIn viewer said, perhaps anxiety is more epigenetic. Now, my girlfriend is a dietitian. She's got her own practice, but she also does work for the Sharks Rugby Union. And she talks about this all the time, right? You've got your DNA. You are dealt a card with your DNA, whatever that is, whatever your DNA structure is. But then there's something like epigenetics. And epi, like she explained to you, is outside, influence. And so you, like you say now, you have now found this thing, the external input that you do that keeps you. She calls it, you can switch your DNA paths on or off. So you can never change your DNA. None of us can change our DNA, but we can switch certain paths on or off by doing certain things. Like you say, your walk, your meditation, man, I love meditation. And I want to get back to, sorry, the talk is going this way now, and I'm going to go with it. I was supposed to talk business with you, but
I don't think these are separate, hey? I don't think that these things are separate. I think you are a better business person if you are a better person.
I agree. I mean, I went through quite a tough time, a challenging time a few years ago. Failure in 2 businesses. I've been divorced twice. So failure in relationships, failure in business, which now
let's pick up on failure later too.
Yeah, and I don't see it as failure anymore. I see those are lessons, big lessons, expensive lessons, but they're there. And I went through a very challenging time, and I have to say, those were I look back now, and I never want to go back to that space, but I'm looking back at that with a lot of gratitude, because those tough and difficult times, those are the times that I learned about myself, and I had to make a decision. Am I going to stay here, or am I going to now get out of this place? And so for me, it was a beautiful time, but I never want it back again. So but like you say, I mean, there are many. I'm very careful using the word mental health, because it can mean anything. There are thousands of different aspects of mental health. I think the things you and I talk about is normal day. Life is challenging. Life throws all kind of curveballs at you, and sometimes you have to dig deep to handle those, right?
Yes, I'm less reluctant to use the words mental health. I have a history of bipolar in my family, and lots of people do. People have histories of depression. And when you say regular day, for a lot of people, the regular day is just trying to wake up. And I think the issue is we don't normalize mental health conversations. So I have, for the last few years, gone out of my way. My first book was actually basically a telling of my failures. Back-to-back 10 businesses in a row from the age of 16 to 26 all failed. And that is brutal. It's hard to deal with, but it's not abnormal. It's the norm. It's the norm that people fail. It's the norm that people go through this stuff. It's the norm that I have all these difficulties. What's not normal is people talking about them. So I made a decision. It must have been about 10 years ago. I was having a conversation with one of my closest friends. My business was in trouble. I hadn't paid myself a salary for 6 months. I just had kidney stones. Everything was screwed up. And we sat down and had coffee, and he said to me, "So how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm amazing. Business is good." And then I stopped and I was like, "Oh, wait, I don't have to lie." And I was like, "Dude, I'm lying." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Everything is screwed. Everything is screwed. My business is going under. I'm terrible. It's all broken." And you know what he did? He looked at me and went, "Oh, thank God. I'm having such a shit time too. This is so terrible." The second I was honest, he was honest back. And that day, there and then, I decided if someone asks me how I am, I'm going to tell them. And if you don't want to know, if you're just asking me to be polite, you're going to run away. That's cool. That's your bag. But my bag is to tell you honestly how I'm doing. And if you want to know, then we'll have a conversation about it. So now I talk about the hard things, because I don't believe that we should, in today's woke age, we should be avoiding politics and religion and difficulty and mental health. We should be heading at those conversations. We should be talking about those things, because the more conversations we have, the more we normalize things like struggle.
So there's a guy that I don't know if you know this guy. There's a French legend, rugby legend that committed suicide 2 days ago. Jumped off a building in France. And so I've been doing a few interviews with a few people, and it's something. Why do men not? Is it men? In my opinion, women talk easier. Women do talk easier about things that trouble them. Men are a little bit reluctant to be vulnerable. You mentioned vulnerability before. Yeah. And I'm not always sure if that is only a South African thing or if it's a worldwide thing, that men is supposed to have this thing about being in control all the time because you're the breadwinner in the day. Things change now. But sometimes I think it's hard for men to talk about tough stuff. And like we said before, life is tough. Life is not easy. So all of us have challenges, right? But people don't talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my opinion is I don't think it is a South African thing exclusively, but I do think there are countries where it is much more acceptable. I think European countries are much more fluid, much more open, much more communicative, much more transparent and vulnerable. I mean, if you had to greet someone in South Africa by kissing them on the cheek twice, they'd probably punch you. That is very common basically anywhere else in the world. It's just us and maybe the UK and the US, like all these stuck up Western countries. So I think there is a stigma attached to it. I think the word that maybe is tied to all of this that I'm trying to get rid of is ego. I think it's all ego. I think we all believe that someone else expects us to be a certain way. And I don't buy into that narrative. I never have. I struggle and I have ego. But I'm not doing the things I'm doing because I want other people to know I'm doing them. And there's a lot of that. I grew up in Johannesburg, and there's a lot of that. Like, what car do you drive? What house do you live in? What job do you have? That stuff just feeds your ego. But I think a lot of us are starting to realize, and this goes back to the pandemic conversation, that stuff means nothing when you're locked in your house with your family. It means nothing. If you can't drive your Ferrari or BMW, all you're doing is spending money on it. And it doesn't make you a better human. The wealthier you get doesn't make you happier. It gives you the resources to find your happiness, but it does not make you happy. Those things are intrinsically not tied together. And then, like, unpacking this more and more, I've done a lot of self-work on separating my output with my self-worth. Those things are not the same. Unfortunately, we live in a world where they are the same. And how many likes you have makes you popular. How much money you have makes you feel better. How much work you do makes you feel worth more. And I'm in a position right now where I don't need to work 8 hours a day. I can work 2 hours a day very intensely and write a book. or contribute to my book, or I can record a video. I don't have to, but I find myself feeling guilty when I don't. If I don't get to 5 o'clock with work, I'm like, have I done something wrong? And that is a really screwed up place to be. I don't need to work 9 hours a day to feel worth something, and nor do you. The chances are most people working a 9-to-5 job don't need to work a 9-to-5 job. They can do their work in 3 hours, but their job is telling them that they are getting paid for 9 to 5. So that's how much they value their time. And there is this very difficult thing that I'm sure you've had it when you finished rugby. My self-worth came from performing on a field in front of 60,000 people. That is gone. So who am I? And that's something that most people don't actually look at head on and go, who am I without the things, without the stuff? And I don't know. I think we'd all be better off if we did remove our self-worth from our output.
That's very true. And I want to follow on that point you made about rugby. So I went through that, right? I went through everything you've just said now. And so when I started talking to business people, I understood that the same thing happened when a owner of a business that started a business and he built this thing up to a big machine over 10 years, and he sells that business. They go through the same thing, and all of a sudden they feel, what am I? Who am I? Because that thing became me. And so in sport, that's very similar, right? So you play the sport, from when you're a kid, and you just flow into professional rugby like I did. And the next thing when it stops, you do ask the questions, but was that me? Was the rugby player actually AJ Venter, or did AJ Venter, the ego? I always talk about the onion. I always say you were born as nothing. And as you then you get a name, AJ, and that's a little layer of the onion. And then you start speaking a certain language, and that becomes a layer. You're a certain skin color, that's a layer. Then I became this rugby player. There's a big layer of my onion. And then as you start going through life, sometimes for me in the last few years, I started looking back and going, but hang on, am I actually the rugby player, or am I something else? And so those are good questions to ask oneself.
And I think that the fundamental problem that we have right now is that there in the world, very broadly, high level, is that there are too many ways to avoid asking yourself those questions. You can read a book, you can listen to a podcast, you can watch TV endlessly, you can distract yourself with social media and doom scroll. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, but I discovered it recently, doom scrolling. Love that. You're scrolling social media looking for doom. That there are so many ways to avoid looking inside. And this sounds very ethereal and philosophical, but it's relevant, because when you peel away all those layers of things that you've put in front of you for your whole life, what's left? I don't think it's defining yourself as an entrepreneur. And that's what Sam and I were talking about. Do you verb yourself or do you noun yourself? And I think nouning yourself is problematic. I am an entrepreneur. Well, no, that's one of the things I do. But I also read, and I also play guitar, and I also like to do X, Y, and Z. Those aren't verbs. Those are things you do, not things you are. And it's a very difficult thing. And I don't think in my 20s I understood this. It was when I got into my mid-30s that I started going, hold on, but am I an entrepreneur, or is that what I do? Am I Greek, or is that where my heritage comes from? Am I South African, or is that just where I was born? I do have this fascination with all of this stuff, and it ties directly. I'm going to shift tack a little bit. A question I get asked a lot is, Nic, what books should I read? Like, I'm a business person, I want to read. And unequivocally, in the last 3 years, I tell people to stop reading business books. I think that it's very easy to get advice from business books, but the way that I feel about advice is asking someone for advice is like asking them for the lottery numbers that help them win the lottery. It just works for them. Those numbers won't work for you. So I tell people to read different things. I've recently started saying it's the smashing together of unexpected things that makes you unique. So reading different things, reading deeper things, reading wider things. There's this phrase, expert generalist, a jack of all trades, but a master of one. So you go deep into one thing. And I like that, right? A jack of all trades, but a master of one thing. And I think that's what makes us interesting and makes us feel less attached to what we do as who we are when you have a diverse set of interests. So I've gone out of my way to diversify what I read. My favorite type of reading is sci-fi novels at the moment. I love reading science fiction.
Amazing. I'm gonna just also change angle a little bit.
Let's do it.
you spoke about 8 to 9 jobs, and I'm sure a lot of those people, like you say, don't necessarily want to be there. They want to run their own business, but don't know how to. And so this is a big thing. Like, you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, and let's talk about the challenges for young people now, wanting to start a business or go into entrepreneurship. Have you got a little bit of advice for people, for youngsters in particular?
Yes, I think the challenges today are significantly less than they have ever been. The barriers to entry are significantly less than they have ever been. The world is a smaller place than it has ever been, and you are more connected than you ever will be, like right now. So the advice is, the best time to start a business was yesterday. The second best time is right now. As a young person, you have no risk. You don't have a bond. You don't have kids. You don't have expenses. I wish that I could go back and only have expenses of like 5,000 Rand a month. Jeez, I would just plow all my money into startups and businesses and start as many as I possibly could, more than I did. Because if you were looking to grow wealth and to be financially free, the way to do that is not through a 9-to-5 job. And the problem here is 9-to-5 jobs, in my view, in my experience of my world, they trap you in a cycle of wanting more. Whereas being an entrepreneur and building things, it traps you in a cycle of creating more. You can create things as an entrepreneur. You're empowered to see a problem in the world and fix it, to see something you don't like and change it. Whereas corporate jobs, they give you the comfort of a salary, and that's absolutely okay. But what you do with that money is usually buy more stuff. So as a young person, my advice is to buy less stuff, invest your money in yourself, and then invest your money in assets.
So do you think, I mean, we spoke about social, or you touched on social media a little bit before. Do you think that right now people think that it's very easy to start a business because you see your mate's Instagram handle and all the beautiful photos, but really the bottom line at the back, there's not much going on there, and so people sometimes jump into these things without maybe doing the work?
Oh yeah, like hands down, the people who succeed are not the ones who start, it's the ones who are consistent, patient and consistent. So I've just launched, off the back of How to Start a Side Hustle book that's coming out, I've launched a course called How to Start a Side Hustle, where I walk people through a 6-week course. So it's 6 weeks to your first sale. And the only goal I have is to set people up to make a sale. Like, it's hard. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. And you know what is easy is starting an Instagram page and saying you're an influencer. Yeah, but how do you make money from that? Like, what's the revenue model? Are you going to get to 1 million followers in South Africa? Yeah, you and the other 5 people who maybe have 1 million followers. So I think that it's easy to start and everyone should try. But the thing that you have to figure out is, how do you become consistent? And I think this is a step that everyone misses in 2020, is you think, internet's going to make me famous. I deserve to be rich. It's mine. I should have it. This is what the world owes me. 1, the world owes you nothing. Nobody owes you anything. 2, the only thing that works is consistency. The people you love, the famous people, the rich people, the wealthy people, they grind. They work hard. The examples of this, Kim Kardashian, we all think she's a laugh. That woman is genius, and she works hard. She is active. She's a smart person. She grinds. Kanye West, same thing. You might not like him, but that guy works. Casey Neistat on YouTube. Everyone wants to be like Casey. Casey Neistat started a vlog and uploaded a vlog every day for 365 days. Think about this. If you are listening or watching this now, what have you done for the last 365 days every single day that consistently has made you a better version of that thing? I can't think of anything. That I've done every day. I write a lot, but I don't write and publish an article every day. I guarantee you that if I could bring myself to do that, at the end of the year, I'd be famous.
Yeah.
But no one wants to put that work in.
Yeah, man. I watched a podcast with Casey. I want to say on Joe Rogan, but I'm not sure. And I was really impressed with his story. I mean, it's also like this, many. It's not just success, like you say. People, I mean, I've done it, man. I look at someone and I see success, and you often just think, okay, that's easy. But there's a lot of ups and downs in most very successful people's lives. It's not easy.
I mean, you would say most. I would say, can you think of anyone you know who is successful who hasn't sacrificed, lost, and struggled?
Yeah,
it's part of the game. I mean, you can't be a Springbok unless you sacrifice, unless you grind every day. You don't get there because you're talented. You get there because you work hard. There are lots of talented rugby players. There are lots of talented writers and singers and actors. The ones who succeed are the ones who work hard, not the ones who are the most talented.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just as you said, there's one, someone said here, as Robert Kiyosaki says, losers are people who are afraid of losing. And that's very true. It's very true.
Yeah, that's a good segue into talking about failure as a concept, which is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I've worked really hard over the last few years to help people redefine and rethink and reframe failure. So the beginning point of this is the world sets us up to think that the opposite of success is failure. When you're a kid, if you don't pass grade 1, you get held back. You failed. If you don't pass your matric exams, you failed and you don't get into university. They don't look at you and go, maybe you're not cut out for that. Maybe there's something else you can do. They tell you that if you don't succeed, then you have failed. I would like to reframe that for everybody. I would like to argue that the opposite of success is not trying. That's it. When you don't try, you have failed. When you try, you've learned something. You've gained something. My favorite saying that I'm pushing into the world is failure is not fatal. For whatever reason, our body instinctively tells us that if we fail, someone's going to kill us. It's going to feel so horrible and terrible. But it's just not true. It's just not true. And if you are going to die when you fail, then you should try something different. Like that's the first thing. Don't do something that might kill you. But fundamentally, we're so deathly afraid to fail in case someone says something funny about us, in case it looks bad. Let me tell you, you're not important enough for anyone to be watching you that closely. Yeah, exactly. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And I'll give you my own version of this. Lockdown hit in. I've got a speaking career, and a lot of my friends are speakers, full-time speakers who travel all around the world to speak. Obviously, they lost all their income in the space of 1 week. Couldn't fly, couldn't travel, couldn't do talks. So I started a business called Remote Keynote, where you could book my friends and all of us as speakers on my website and do a virtual gig, virtual talk. And I got everybody rallied around. In 2 weeks, we built the website, got all this stuff. Crickets. I launched it publicly. Nobody bought a single talk from this website. So I shut it down. Do you know what people said? Nothing. Nobody cared. Nobody noticed.
Exactly.
Nobody cares. And I think we're so deathly afraid of failure that if we just reframe it as a learning, and what I like to say is it's a through point, not an end point. For whatever reason, we're a conservative culture that believes that when you fail, it is over. And it's just not true. There's a study that was done many years ago, conservative country entrepreneurs versus not conservative. And in places like America, entrepreneurs quit after the 3rd business attempt. In places like South Africa, they quit after the 1st. And that is a fundamental difference. That is a 300% increase from 1 to 3. That's why they succeed. That's why they make more businesses. Another stat that I love, that I read again recently, was verified in another article I read a week ago. Most successful startup entrepreneurs are an average age of 45. Why? Because they've learned stuff, because they've failed, because they've iterated, because they've developed and evolved. If you only try once and walk away, what are you learning? So we need to break this concept of failure being fatal. It's not.
So I've got a lovely personal story that relates to that. As I retired, I started working for Absa Wealth. Obviously, high net worth clients. So I've got to bring the clients in. After that, I worked for another bank. Also, same job. So big jobs, big corporates. From there, I left. I tried my hand at 2 of my own businesses and failed, both of them. And I had this other idea, like a 5th idea. And I remember there was, I won't mention his name. We've spoken about this, so we're good now. But so it's a guy that played Springbok rugby that I looked up to. I still look up to. I look up to him. And he became a very successful businessman. So I looked up to him in sport and in business. So I took this idea to him in his office one day. I sat down and I did my little spiel, and the first thing he said was, "Are you in another business?" And so he didn't mean to be rude.
Yes.
It was the fact. That was the 5th business in 3-4 years that I've done. So I am jumping. I'm searching. But what I took out of it was, I think everyone thinks that of me. I think everyone thinks that I just jump. I just don't stick with one thing. I'm all over the show. And that made me, man, it took me 3-4 years to get over that thing of, that is the people's perception of me. But in effect, it was only my perception. I took that a little bit bad, right? Because it was true. And all of a sudden I made that reality in my mind. And years later, one day at the bar, like I've seen him many times since, but this one day we had a few wines, and I said to him, I just want to tell you, this is what happened that day. And he said to me, man, I can't even remember. When was this? Did you ever come see me in my office? And so he didn't think about it. He didn't remember it, but I made it a big thing in my life. So I built up this perception, and I've done it a few other times in life as well. So that's a big thing. We make up these things in our mind, and we stick with it.
Yeah, this is, there's so much to unpack here. The first is a brilliant quote that I heard on Ben Saunders. He's an explorer. If you haven't found him, go and Google him. He's amazing. He ended one of his TED videos over a decade ago with a phrase that's something to the effect of, no one has authority over your potential. No one gets to tell you what you are capable of. Nobody. You are the only person who defines your boundaries. That sounds very self-help, chicken soup for the soul, but internalize that message. You are the only person preventing yourself from doing the next thing. That's it. Because nobody cares. Nobody is there to help you or change you or fix you. It's on you. And there is a strange culture of other people must think of me, must do this, must help me. No. Nobody's here to help you. The government's not going to save your business. They're not going to give you a loan. It's nobody's job to make your life better. It's yours. First and foremost. So that's the first thing. The second thing is another topic that's incredibly close to me that I love talking about, is called imposter syndrome. If anyone watching this has never heard of imposter syndrome, please go and do your research. It will change your life. Everyone from Elon Musk to Ariana Huffington to Richard Branson have claimed to have this feeling. And imposter syndrome is the feeling that in spite of external validation, you don't believe you belong where you are. So AJ runs onto the field as a Springbok, and in spite of 60,000 people cheering from him, he still doesn't believe he's good enough to be on the field. That is imposter syndrome. Okay. And we've all felt it. To bring it more close to home, you walk into a meeting at your office and there are the CEOs, the MDs, and you think, oh crap, they all think I don't belong here. Let me tell you, they all feel the same way. Everybody in that meeting feels like they don't belong. As soon as you understand this and the context that everyone feels this way, the sooner it won't matter to you. Because we all feel that way. We all feel like we don't belong. So my version of imposter syndrome that I've come across is another way to phrase it is imposter phenomenon. And I prefer this one because imposter phenomenon implies that it is a phenomenon that helps you push yourself. When you don't feel like you know enough, you go and learn. When you don't feel comfortable, you become comfortable. When you don't feel like you've trained hard enough, you train harder. So I prefer the idea that when I feel uncomfortable, imposter syndrome makes me feel like I need to do more work and go and learn more and push harder. So I'm hugely fond of that. And then there is a second thing I'd like to introduce to anyone listening. It's something called post-traumatic growth. And studies have been done on people who go through very real, very visceral trauma.
Listen, I just have to say, I like that. I don't know where you're going with this, but I like that a lot. I'm excited to hear about it.
When I read about this, and it's not covered very far and wide, but when I read about this, all I could think is everybody should know about this. So the basic premise is 89% of people in these studies after a trauma claimed to have gotten better. They're better versions of themselves. Trauma helped them see themselves in a different way, helped them learn something different, helped them become something they weren't going to become before. So let's look at failure as a trauma. This is the framing I want to put on this. If failure is a trauma, and I believe it is, every time you fail, you go through a micro trauma of some kind, then post-traumatic growth suggests that with every failure, you get better. So you should be striving for failure. You should be pushing to fail more often, but in smaller bites, so that you don't lose your house when you fail. Rather lose a few rand, or rather lose face and then learn something. But if you are failing all the time and learning these lessons and iterating, it's like getting rebooted every time with new software updates. That's how I see this. So we should be striving for failure, not avoiding it. You can't avoid failure towards success. It doesn't work that way. I've never met a successful person who has avoided failure.
Absolutely. And so I, after hours thing that I do, and I do it because I really love it. I talk to kids about exactly this. I tell them about my little story that happened with me, and try to make them understand that there is no easy route. Life is full of challenges. Almost no one in the world, or your businessman, goes through life without challenges. Like you say, failures, challenges. When you get there, deal with them, learn, and go on. Because no one is going to go through life without any challenges. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter in what a wealthy house you grow up. You're going to go through challenges. And how do you deal with those things?
100%. And it's a big part of why I wrote my first book, was more catharsis for myself. To go, you did fail 10 times back to back. Let's park those now. You've learned the lessons. Here it is. Here's the book. Behind me over there on my counter. This is what you've learned. Now let them go. Learn those lessons and move forward. And that's what's had to happen. It's an interesting topic.
Man, thank you. Nic, we can talk for another hour, it seems like. I'll have to go and visit you when I'm in Cape Town. I have a Dopsky or wine.
Sounds good to me. Interestingly, just randomly, I stopped drinking recently for no other reason than I just stopped. I can't tell you why. Yeah. It's been about 7 months now. I've never felt better. I've never slept better.
I'm loving my wine at this moment. I'm loving it. I don't know. It actually started, I think, with lockdown. All of a sudden, when we couldn't have wine, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not happy with not having wine anymore.
And for me, it was the opposite. When lockdown kicked in, I just stopped. I have no idea why. So strange.
That's cool. So quickly, are those the shirts that you guys sell?
How do you mean? I don't sell shirts.
So don't you? I thought I saw that you guys sell socks and t-shirts. No,
I sold that business 2 years ago.
Oh, cool. All right. Okay.
Yeah, thankfully, just before lockdown became an issue in my life, we had 5 stores around the country and exited that business 2 years ago. No, this is a very simple, plain white shirt from Superbalist.
Lovely. Nic, thank you, man. It was a lovely chat, and thank you for being open and speaking truthfully.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, as you said, so people can just search me at Nic Haralambous. Otherwise, they can find me at my website at nharry.com.
Wonderful. Thanks, brother.
Awesome. AJ, thank you.
Cheers, buddy. Have a good one.
Bye.
How do I shoot this thing off? There we go. I've got a mouse that's a little bit